It's fair to me.
Fair decision.
Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Good to have you with us. Wow, this week the county executive was indicted, resigned, and tomorrow expected to plead guilty. So we have a lot to talk about. But first, let's meet the panelists around the big green table for this edition of Donnybrook, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Weiss from the Big 550, KTRS. From the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, we welcome back one of our founders, Mr. Bill McClellan, who's back where he belongs. From the Big 550 KTRS, where he began his evening program Monday night, 9 to 11, with Jay Kanzler, and he's also a columnist for the Riverfront Times. He's got a pretty big business card, Mr. Ray Hartman. And from the St. Louis American, STLmag.com and beyond, Alvin Reed. And before we begin, just thanks to the readers of the Post-Dispatch Go section, who last week voted us the #1 locally produced television show. So thank you so much.
The key there is produced, which we don't have anything to do with.
Yeah, well, that's true.
We just sit here with our hands.
I think they were talking about the
folded.
crew's work. To be
Well,
honest with you.
hey, thanks to Anne Marie Berger and the best television crew
I think
working
that's what they
today.
were
Thank you
saying.
so much.
We're the polar bear.
All right, that's enough about us. How about Steve Stenger, Alvin Reed, the county executive? First of all, 44-page indictment where he was accused of, among other things, giving contracts and grants at county government to his donors and directing taxpayer money to his donors. So he resigned, he was indicted, and we understand that tomorrow at 10:30 in the courtroom of Federal Judge Catherine Perry, he's going to plead guilty. This just after about a month ago, insisting he is not the target of a federal investigation. So the events move very quickly. What's your take on this?
Well, you know, we could go back, what is it now, 5 years, and when he ran the first time. And what really turned me off on him was the way he ran. I thought it was a lot of racial innuendo. I thought it was an attack on Charlie Dooley's character based upon corruption in St. Louis County government. And speaking of corruption in St. Louis County government, it looks like he's going to plead guilty to such. This is a bad night for the Stenger family, obviously. This is a bad night for St. Louis County. But I'll tell you what, it's just one of those things that once it got started and people were saying, like, what is going on? What is going on? It would seem like the person in the position where everyone is saying what's going on would say, like, well, what is going on? We need to calm down. We need to tamp it down. We need to address why these questions are about my administration. Never did it. So I'm not going to say comeuppance. I'm not going to say I was right and I told everybody I was right. I'm just, although I just said everybody's right. Well, everybody's right. But
no, I understand what you're saying, because it was a year ago in the summer of 2018 when members of the county council in open session said that they heard that Sheila Sweeney, who headed up the St. Louis County Economic Development Partnership, was being tailed by federal agents, right?
Yes, yes.
Members of the long arm of the law. And so you would think that the county executive would then, if he was wheeling and dealing and engaging in pay-to-play, would pull back. But according to this indictment, through November and December of last year, he was still directing her to give contracts to his donors.
It's simple stuff, Charlie. Like, why does the county executive not go to the county council meeting?
Well, he missed 9 in a row. That's
true. It's just silly stuff.
Issues.
But at the same time, it like pointed to the fact that I'm bigger than life.
He became less transparent, right? I mean, if anything, he became more remote. He came in with a little tiny bit of promise. What I detected was mostly indifference, but it got worse. I mean, it got worse. The more the pressure seemed to be applied to him, and the more these stories, you know, everybody was talking about what's going on. What does this mean? Well, now we know what it means. But no, he was not interested in playing the choir boy.
Well,
he was
it's a fine line, though. I mean, I remember Mayor Daley, when I was growing up in Chicago, got in trouble for giving something to his kids, and he just said, "What? You can't even help your own family now?" I mean, politicians are always, they don't give contracts to their enemies.
Right.
They help their donors, but that's a line that can be crossed. And not long ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who knows Steve Stenger well, and I said, "It sounds like almost Michael Corleone." And he said, "No, you don't get it. It's more like Sonny Corleone. The guy with temper, and the guy who the Don, the Godfather knew. Sonny could never be in charge because he'd get carried away. And it almost is like Stenger just got carried away doing this stuff."
What are you looking at me for? Something happened?
You ran Stenger's
I missed it.
campaign,
Something happened? No, first of all, let me correct Alvin Reed about something. Alvin was right, and I was wrong a lot in sticking up. I mean, Stenger's my friend. He's a friend. I feel bad for everybody.
Yeah.
Obviously, he let a lot of people down. And one thing I will say is during the Mueller investigation, everybody talked about Justice Department. Is it Justice Department policy that you can't indict a sitting president? We've now established it is not Justice Department policy that you can indict a sitting county executive.
Right.
We've established you can do that. No, but and to Bill's point, I will say there's no minimizing this. I'm really interested to see what happens tomorrow because he apparently has a plea deal, and if he has a plea deal, there's at least a lot of courtroom gossip that there's other dominoes to fall, which will be interesting. And hopefully people can learn from this. I think Bill's right. Our entire system is built on pay to play. I mean, the entire system. It's just a question of whether you do it properly. And obviously, that doesn't excuse. No, I'm saying, excuse me. What I'm saying is the entire system says it's okay to give money to get access. I'm not forgiving Stenger here. I'm saying when you get to a point where it's criminal and it's clumsy and he's getting what he deserves. I'm not talking about that. But our entire system is built on the idea, whether it's a labor union for the Democrats or a civic progress company, whoever it is, if you give money to a politician, you should get something in return.
Well,
maybe
hang on a
access.
moment.
And I don't like that.
Let's talk about that because
that's true.
It is true you can get
Access is
access.
one thing.
You
Access, you
get in the
shouldn't get
office,
access.
But here's
It
what
shouldn't
happened.
get you access.
He was giving money
No,
from the Port Authority.
Of course.
According to the indictment, he was giving it to Sorcus Webby. There's a blast from the past, although Sorcus Webby is identified as SW, but the Post-Dispatch labeled him as SW. John Cross, a political operative,
minimizing
just
what
got
he
money
did.
for not doing any work. And then a guy by the name of John Rollo, who seems to be cooperating with the federal authorities. He got like $130,000 just because he donated to the Stenger campaign.
He clearly, let's not minimize his crimes. He
Right,
obviously
that's what I'm
did.
saying.
I'm not minimizing him. I'm saying, kind of along with what Bill said, is there's this, let's not pretend that now that the ding dong the witch is dead, we can go back to where there's no pay for play. Because in the city
Wendy
and the
Weiss,
county
let's go there.
And it's
Wendy
not
Weiss.
minimizing Stenger's
Wendy,
crimes.
if that's who else should be concerned at this point?
Well, hey, let me, before we go on, as long as you mention the Post, let me give a shout out to Jacob Barker
Amen.
and Jeremy
Yes,
Kohler
yes.
And
and Tony Messenger.
Amazing.
I mean, Barker?
Who the federal prosecutor?
Yes,
said,
I mean,
thumbs up.
I mean,
Your
Barker
paper,
and Kohler
your
in
paper
particular
did a good
great
job.
job.
Tony Messenger had some great stuff
he
on
did.
this
Great
for a long
job.
time.
The editorial, we were
We'll
debating,
get to that,
but
Wendy.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Who should be worried?
I think this is just my intuition. I think there's somebody even bigger than the county executive who is going to be implicated in all of this. I'm not going to mention any names just on the outside chance, but I think that there are some very big fish about to go in the
Well,
frying
I mean,
pan.
you're keeping quiet about it, but today's front page above the fold, Post-Dispatch, pulled Congressman Lacey Clay into the orbit because, among other things, John Cross, who allegedly got $25,000 in taxpayer money for doing nothing. Actually, he did do something. He got votes for Steve Stenger when Steve was running against Charlie Dooley. So Cross is associated, and I guess, a political operative for the congressman. And then there's more than that. Congressman's former chief of staff, Darrell Piggy, has been brought into this, along with
Text messages
along with
about
Steve Stone,
I
who
don't
is an
wanna-
attorney, and
Right.
Lacey Clay's PAC is at Steve Stone's office.
I'm
Well, and
just
I don't-
saying
I don't
that
think
the
we should-
speed with which
Yeah, I think
all
we.
of
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'd say I was agreeing with you. I think I don't think we should be speculating about people.
Everyone's not,
Right.
well, we're just saying this is the
Well,
front
it
page
may-
of the paper.
Yeah, this is not in the
Well, I
newspaper.
get it, but
and
but
Steve
what
Stenger has a plea deal,
But
and
we
if you
don't
have a
know-
plea deal,
Well,
that
that's-
something is up because you have
Correct.
to give up something to get
Well,
a
that's
plea
what I
deal.
was
And
about
we
to say.
assume,
And that's what we're
Right.
saying.
And then on top of that,
Right.
and
Lot
it
of
may
moving
like legal
pieces.
or not, but the carpenters union gets a big chunk of cash, and then they move this cash to another place, and it's just like, well, that was obvious. He gave the money to the carpenters union,
Well,
and
I
then the
think-
carpenters union moved it on. Now that might be all.
No, I was just going to say this. First of all, let's not forget the federal investigation is ongoing. They made that very clear. And I was trying to agree with you. I was saying that I don't want to get into speculating who it might be, but when it came out Monday that you had this combination of a not guilty plea, but he was resigning and giving up his law license, and he happens to be represented by the most effective defense attorney in town, Scott Rosenblum. It was pretty obvious at that point that some sort of plea deal was being made.
Well, yeah, but
and
obviously,
so
but when it happened, there were
but-
people that immediately said, like, well, just
Right.
because you hired the best criminal attorney in town doesn't mean that you've committed any crime.
I would say
remember
that.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah, well, obviously, it was like, well, look, if I hadn't done anything wrong, and I knew I hadn't done anything
Well,
wrong until
That's
I'm
one of the
charged,
most-
Okay.
then I'm
That
not
is
hiring
one
an
of-
attorney.
Scott Rosenblum, that is one of the most powerful nonverbal things I've ever witnessed in my entire
is that?
life. I'm just saying
Exactly.
that whenever you hear the name Scott Rosenblum, and I actually audibly went, uh-oh.
And
I
may
mean,
I add this?
No, it's a good- it's a good guy to
He's a
have.
great, yeah, but
Scott Rosenblum enters the court and comes out of the court for your arraignment and says, like, this is total hoo-yah, we'll beat the rap. He came out and said, like, this is a tough take for Steve Stenger.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew
Okay.
that,
Yeah.
uh-oh.
Okay, now, Ray Hartman, I want to ask you about the
Stop
succession.
asking me stuff.
You have concerns about how Sam Page
Well-
has become the next county executive, and he's going to serve until
Well-
at least, I guess, the 2020 election.
Well, first of all, everybody ought to wish Sam Page well. I mean, we want the county to do better, and the county council is making nice, at least publicly. We had a couple legislators on KTRS. We had Mark Harder and Tim Fitch both came on and said a lot of the right things. I personally think the way this went down this week from that perspective, I thought it was disrespectful to Hazel Irby. She had a bunch of folks there. There were some draft Manavani people. We had Joan Bray on our show. There were people that would have liked at least the appearance, and this is a shot, not, you always say I'm partisan. This is the Democrats we're talking about that control the county council. They had a process that really, even if, as Tim Fitch points out, they were going to come up with the end of Sam Page being the county executive, which is fine, they really disrespected the people that showed up for the meeting. They wouldn't let them talk. It was very clumsy start. And one other thing that I didn't think was great was when Sam Page was asked on Better Together, this would have been a really good time as somebody that doesn't like Better Together to hear the new county executive, departing from the one I should have been more critical of, say, listen, Better Together, better rethink it because this county executive isn't going to let it happen on my watch. Instead of that, he said,
Okay.
well,
All
we'll
right.
see.
Well, wait. He's under the gun from these. You call it frivolous, but there's these. You cannot spend any county money or any county time. Battling Better Together. So he's a lawyer.
That's interesting.
So he was
Well,
probably saying, like,
he's not a
look,
lawyer, he's a doctor.
A doctor. I thought he was a lawyer too.
He's not a
doctor.
He's a smart guy.
What you're
and he said,
saying-
like, I'm leaving it alone because that ship is in flames. Well, I got
leadership
that right
leadership
there.
would have been to be very clear, and with a 3-1 majority of people in the county having a problem with Better Together, he should have said, "We need
Well,
a
that might be
reset."
so.
Well, it's
But it's
early. He's only
5-1.
he's only been off for
But
48
the
hours.
bigger thing was
Less
the
than
bigger
that.
thing
That's
was they
ridiculous.
blew up and
You can't judge his record thus far.
The bigger thing was they could have taken a couple weeks and given people a
Why?
say.
But he explained that
could.
they had to pick somebody
Oh.
at that meeting that
he
night.
could-
And everybody knew he had the support of the council.
Well, I think
why have
Hazel
this
Irby
pretense?
deserved a lot more
5-1.
respect than she
Tim
got.
Fitch even voted for him. So
As did Rochelle Walton Gray. You get Tim Fitch and Rochelle Walton Gray on the same side.
Right,
You obviously are doing
yeah.
something
But-
right.
But I
And
once
it-
again,
yeah.
we'll see. As I said,
Okay,
they wish him
Bill-
well, but we'll see how much
All
better
right,
things
let's
get.
now go to Ladue. Bill, you weren't with us last week. It's so good to have you back. But when you were gone, we were talking about a Ladue police officer who got into an altercation with a suspected thief at the Schnucks in Ladue. and, as it turns out, shot the alleged thief. And it turns out this week her attorney, Travis Noble, indicated that the police officer thought that she was pulling her taser when instead she was pulling her firearm when she shot and wounded this thief at the Ladue Schnucks. So Wesley Bell, the county prosecutor, has charged the police officer from Ladue with second-degree assault. Is that a proper move by the prosecutor?
Well, it's difficult. You know, if one of my adult children was shot after shoplifting at Schnucks, I'm sure I'd be outraged. But if I could practice law without a license, I'd say that the police officer was overcharged. You know, because they talk about reckless conduct. And reckless conduct always suggests in court, to me, when I've heard it, somebody doing something that they should have known better. Like if you fire a shot into a crowd, you know, reckless means that you knew or should have known that this could cause injury. If you drive drunk, that's reckless conduct. But what if you don't mean to drive drunk and instead you take like an aspirin, what you think is an aspirin, and it turns out to be a sleeping pill and you fall asleep? It's a different thing. So you know, and when Travis Noble then said that, you know, he doesn't think his client wants to be a police officer again, I thought, well, there's the outlines of a settlement. You know, the young woman who was shot should sue, and I suspect successfully,
Civilly.
the Ladue Police Department. But I think that the police officer should be allowed to plead guilty to a lesser charge and give up her ticket to be a police officer.
Well, I can go one step further, and I'll say, like, all these things that happen involving police officers and suspects, whatever, have to be judged one situation at a time. I think something untowardly happened in Ferguson. Okay, I don't care what the grand jury came up with or what the Justice Department. I think something unlawful happened on that street. I think if a police officer is in a car and somebody, you know, slams into them and runs away, and you say, like, I'm gonna kill this MF or, you know, whatever, and the guy ends up dead, it's kind of like, you know, you have to look at that. Okay, and this one, I don't think she should have been charged at all. I think the lady made a mistake. And yes, Ladue will be sued and they will settle, and yes, she will not be a police officer anymore, but I honestly don't think that she should be charged with a crime. And of all places,
Because it was a mistake.
because it was a mistake, and in all places, precedents, Lawrence, Kansas, the exact same thing happened. Taser, accident, all that. The case got thrown out because the judge or jury said that there's no way you could prove what the intent of the officer was. I don't think she should have.
I disagree with Alvin. I think Wesley Bell did exactly the right thing here. It's a tough case, and we feel for everybody that's involved in this, whether it's a police officer, who I understand to be a very fine young woman, and obviously the victim in this case is in intensive care still, and so we don't really, I mean, this is an evolving
Very
thing.
serious.
Yeah, and Wesley Bell not only ran on holding police accountable, which he did, but he followed through on one part of it. Is he, you know, now I thought he was going to be more involved with special prosecutors than he was.
Well,
but,
he campaigned that he would have a special prosecutor,
all right,
Ray.
right. Okay, let me
Instead,
finish.
he's got like a commission.
Okay,
Well, you brought that
all right.
up.
Okay, well, I don't agree with it. I think he should have a special prosecutor. But what he did do, to your point, is he had a panel of three external review commission that he took this case to, which I think was a really good thing to do. And they weren't three people off the street. It was Lisa Van Amberg, who's a very respected judge. Well, I can tell you, I mean, unless you don't want to say it, but there's an African-American
We have
judge
30 minutes, Sean.
and a member of a 25-year prosecutor in Bob McCall's office. Those people disagree with your assessment and yours. Well, actually, not yours. They agreed that he should be charged, and then Wesley made the decision. She should be charged, and that Wesley made the decision to charge. And I think I think we'll let the system decide how reckless it was.
She was so, I mean, clearly, visibly devastated in the mugshot. And frankly, I'm kind of surprised. When you yell, taser, taser, taser 3 times, I'm surprised if this kind of thing, I mean, obviously she's a human being. I'm kind of surprised that she lasted as long as she did.
I'll tell you
anything
what,
like
you know
that.
what I'm
this.
surprised about? I'm surprised that she just didn't lie. Because if she had lied and the video showed somebody running away from her and she said, like, I felt like I was in
let's say
danger,
something. Can I say
you know,
something
like
about this?
she probably would have gotten off.
We're talking that when they go to reckless, the question is going to be, first of all, it was an unarmed suspect. Was there a need to shoot anything? And the idea that you mixed up your taser and your gun is going to go to the question of whether it's reckless.
That's
and the
not
cases
a
you're talking
comfort.
about.
That's not a comfort.
The cases you're talking about is when a police officer feels in danger. That wasn't
all
in
she
danger.
needed to say
She
was,
not
"I'm in danger," and
She was.
ultimately
Well, she didn't.
would not-
She wasn't in danger.
Right.
Do you think that the alleged thief should be charged?
With shoplifting
Yeah, okay.
and maybe resisting arrest.
And by the way, that's not on Wesley Bell because that's up
Okay.
to the county police.
Alvin, I'm going to ask you a question. You've been in newspapers all your working life. And the Post-Dispatch editorial page today had a real beauty when they defended their November endorsement of Steve Stenger for county executive, even though their own paper had written 2 years' worth of articles showing all the things that led to his indictment. They still endorsed him. And they said, well, we had to endorse somebody because our readers were looking for direction. Also, they said that if anyone's to blame, it's the unions who supported Steve Stenger. What do you think of that editorial?
Well, this is they wrote. Remember, the Post-Dispatch wrote an editorial about the was it the first soccer stadium deal or was it the football stadium deal that said like it stinks to high heaven but vote for it.
Right.
I was like, what kind of editorial is that? I had always been one in my younger days when I worked at various newspapers across the United States when the editorial board took a pass, and I was like, no, you have to pick a side. You have to. And they said, no, we don't. And this was one of those where they said, like, no, we don't. We endorsed Mark Mantovani, okay, and he lost. And then Barry, who ran on the Republican side, was just not worth endorsing, so they could have just said, take a pass. You all
Of course,
knew.
it was the most ridiculous thing I ever saw because, look, first of all, they could have taken a victory lap if they wanted for their great reporting that we were talking about, and they endorsed Mantovani, which is more than I can say. And I mean, the point is they were vindicated by that. The county is still better off than if that Republican who was.
What about Nick Kassoff?
The point is,
independent. Good
excuse
guy.
me,
I
the
like
county,
him.
whatever
Or they
I think
could
of
have said
Sam,
nobody.
I just said, my point is, Sam Page is the county executive going forward. We're a lot better off with that.
No, the question is the
than when somebody-
Post-Dispatch editorial.
So they have nothing to
I was kind of
groveling about.
I was stunned by that tactic. That well, we had to. No,
That's
if you
ridiculous.
knew that he was guilty and that something stinks this badly. No, that would have been the most profound statement. I'm sorry.
And
I enjoy the editorial. I mean, and
terrible.
like most readers, I don't read the endorsements carefully, and I saw that we had endorsed Stenger. And okay, I'm used to the paper endorsing people that I wouldn't like, but I thought it was interesting to hear about Mr. Barry. That he was doing some strange things. I mean, putting fake stories together about, my opponent has been charged with having sex with an underage girl. My opponent's done this stuff that the paper didn't want to mention because they didn't want to draw attention and readership to these bizarre claims. And I thought, okay, I can see why they would make a decision that Mr. Barry is so out there that we'll endorse somebody else.
Bill, this takes us back to the old days of the Post, where they would always have a Republican and a Democrat in the primary. They would always endorse somebody. And no matter how bad, I mean, if Osama bin Laden had been the only candidate running for president, they were going to endorse him in the Republican primary. And it was so ridiculous. Somebody they absolutely would attack 364 days a year in the Republican primary. We realize we hate this guy, but he's the only one there.
honestly,
it's so ridiculous.
You know who's to blame,
It's so
really?
ridiculous.
The Republicans in the county. They didn't put up any candidate.
But they did.
I mean,
Now that's a
they
fair
are the
point.
one.
They
If
should
anyone's
have
to
known.
blame,
Yeah.
and they should have put Rick Stream up again.
But then blaming the unions, there's on the other side of the state, just real
That's
quick,
interesting
they're having
for
this
a-
turmoil because the Kansas City Star wrote an editorial that part of the problem with Tyreek Hill, and I know this is kind of grasping the guy that whatever, their receiver, they blamed the fans because like you all want to, you guys weren't up in arms. You're like, what? So same thing.
Okay,
like,
Alvin.
Like what?
Wendy, who's going to run for 2020? Now, we have Sam Page in there now, but there will be another election with a primary in August of 2020, followed by the general election in November of 2020.
Some of the names that have already been sort of kicked around tonight, I wouldn't be surprised to see Rick Stream. I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see Mark Mantovani and Tim Fitch.
I was speaking with Joe Holloman, and he said, like, are you going to run? I said, like, yeah, and you'll work for me, and our indictment will be the Moby Dick of indictments. So I don't know if you would actually want to, like, even get involved in county politics, right?
I think that I think Mantovani is somebody. There was a draft Mantovani movement there for a minute, and I'll stick to what I said. I think they should have had a more open process.
I think he'll run, though.
But I think that he would be, in my opinion, the front runner.
Would he run as a Republican or as a Democrat?
I think. Well, I was the one, and I may have offended him saying it. I said before that he should have run as a Republican because the thing that pushed me back against him when he was running, and he's a really bright guy and a good guy, was the fact that he had supported Eric Greitens not only in the primary but against Chris Koster.
Well, see, though, that's the problem, right?
But in a county, I think it's getting to the point where I don't know that the party, how the party labels.
Well, if he runs as a Republican, then Tim Fitch will bring up that, hey, 2 years ago, this guy ran as a Democrat.
No, the answer is I think he'll run as
primary.
No, to answer your question, he'll run as a Democrat if he runs.
Well, he's going to have a hard time against an incumbent.
I don't
who's
know
a
that, but let's wait
real
and see.
Democrat.
Let's wait and
Sam
see.
Page?
Sam Page is not.
Sam Page is a doctor. Does he want another 4 years?
We don't even know if he wants
Sam-
He certainly
he's a
seems
Democrat.
like he's a
Yeah.
willing.
All right.
No,
hey,
I
that's
think
all the time we have
Mantovani
for
would
this
beat Sam
episode.
Page.
Okay,
You
thank
think
you
so?
so
I
much.
do. He
If you'd like to comment on the proceedings, write us, care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those letters at ketc.org and those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL. You can listen to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn, and it's so good to have Bill McClellan back. Tell you what, folks, don't go away. Start tweeting because we'll be reading them. Wendy and I will in just a moment on Your Turn.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Well, hello. Welcome to Donnybrook Your Turn. I am your flight attendant. The captain this evening will be flying us at 50,000 feet. Doesn't that sound right? 50,000 watts, 50,000 feet. But it was a great show, and we are very much looking forward to hearing your comments. And where are we going to start, Mr. Captain?
Hey, Herman in Ellington joins us and is the first up to bat. Hi, Herman.
Hi, Herman.
Howdy. How are you tonight?
Doing
Good.
very well.
I would like to make a comment about Mr. Stenger. And I hope they throw the book at him. I know he's got a family, but all criminals have families, and they're going to have to start being really tough on these elected officials to show them they got to show some integrity and some morality and follow the law. Yeah. And that is my comment, and I'll listen to you off the phone. Have a good night.
Yeah, we'll see. He's in the court of Judge Catherine Perry, and it's hard to say exactly what she's thinking. In fact, it's impossible. But, yeah, I'm predicting like 10 years, but I've heard other people say 3. I don't know.
Ken Warren said that he believes that he will be made an example of, but he doesn't think the sentencing will be too harsh. And I keep thinking that the speed, you know, I mean, this has been a breakneck speed.
Yeah.
So anything, you know, we could we could be surprised. I mean, we really have no idea. Let's go to Carol in St. Louis County. Hi, Carol. Welcome to Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hi, thank you. I love the program.
Thanks.
Watch it every week. My comment is on the shooting in Ladue. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Sure, you
ma'am.
bet. Thanks.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't there, and I definitely, coming from a family of law enforcement officers, understand what the police officer was going through at that time. I do feel that she did have a weapon, in my opinion. It was the handcuff, that she was handcuffed with just one hand. She wasn't handcuffed by both hands. When you swing that handcuff around, it can be a weapon. The other point, though, is all of us, we don't know what happened or who was thinking what at that time. My problem is I don't understand why we voted last year or the year before for this Proposition P money that was supposed to go for our police departments. I know that a lot of the police departments out here in St. Louis County have taken their money, this Prop P money, and put it into their general revenue. I think.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Sure, appreciate your call. You know, the money has to go to public service, but what they're doing is extending the definition of public service. So
Broadening. Yeah.
Public safety is what I meant to say. Public safety,
Right.
not public service. So yeah, they're broadening. You're exactly right. Thank you so much for your
very
call.
much, Carol. We appreciate it. Well, we have sort of a historic event going on in St. Louis at an establishment called The Haunt. We actually have a Donnybrook watch party. They are watching Donnybrook live, a group of young people, and we have never felt older or more grateful. So welcome, Donnybrook Watch Party. You are on the air.
Hi, Donnybrook. We just wanted to say that we've actually got about 6 or 7 of us now. We wanted to just thank Bill for showing up and give him a shout out for that awesome Godfather reference. But our question that we decided to ask as a group was, do you think that Better Together will continue on, or do you think it'll be shot down like Sonny in The Godfather was? And I'll take my question off here. Thank you.
So did Bill show up?
At the toll booth, right? Is Bill there? Is Bill there?
She apparently.
I think she's disconnected.
Well, here's the deal. I think Better Together is going to continue because, it's a statewide vote that matters. In fact, the local vote doesn't matter all that much when it comes to the statewide vote on Better Together and the city-county merger in 2020. So I'm thinking that people in Hannibal and Independence, Kansas City, St. Joe, they're not following the Steve Stenger saga. And I don't think that this scandal diminishes the chances of passage at all. How about you?
I think that it does. I think it does diminish the chance of passage, and because Steve Stenger was the point man. He had been named by Better Together as the super majority mayor, at least until we could hold another election. I think they were surprised by obviously what has transpired, as anybody else is, but it still gives the appearance that people who should have known better did not know better. And I just somehow think that if there are people on the fence, and I have not met anyone on the fence about this, frankly, they're in their silos, either for or against pretty firmly. I think it weakens the case, but that's just my opinion.
Well, hey, Crystal, you're in Swansea. What do you say?
Yes, hi. I wanted to comment about the shooting that happened at the Snooks grocery store.
Sure.
By the way, thank you for taking my call this evening. I understand, and I try to look at this thing from both sides here. I know that the officer had 13 years of experience. And if this happened maybe the first year or the first 2 years, but the crime didn't fit the force that was used. I mean, I'm looking at this again. I'm trying to look at it on both sides, and just the crime did not. It just doesn't match the type of force that was used. Couldn't back up, be calm. You know, we're talking about a police officer who has been a police officer for 13 years. And I know that in the heat of the moment, you can probably confuse certain things, but 13 years of experience is hard to imagine that happening. I just want to know what your thoughts were about it.
Are you saying, Crystal, that in terms of the force that was used, do you think the taser was excessive or the mistaken service revolver?
Well, I think the fact that you made a mistake with the difference between a taser and a service revolver, I mean, I think that I would expect that from someone that's newly on the force to kind of mistake those two. And I know that in the middle of a tussle, you know, your adrenaline is running really high, but to 13 years of experience, and I think if you're on the ground tussling back and forth, I wouldn't pull anything if I'm in that close proximity of someone. I would be afraid to pull anything out of, you know, I would be afraid. I'm not a police officer, but my husband is. But if I were that, I would be afraid to pull out anything. Say if she grabbed it from me, and as a police officer, I was shot by her. I just want to know what your thoughts were on that, because again, you're looking at an officer with 13 years of experience.
Right. Crystal, great points. Thanks so much for your call. And I find it almost unbelievable that someone would reach for the wrong, to reach for a taser when you're thinking you're going to reach for your firearm. I would like to see the video, and I hope it's made public. Thanks a lot for your call.
Thank you very much for the phone call, Crystal. And we are going to Parker in St. Louis. Hi, Parker. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I had a question. There was an article recently in the Post about Lewis Reed saying that the city should pull out of the city-county development partnership in light of the new developments with the county executive. What are you? I thought it was, to me, it just struck me as kind of locking the barn after the horse is gone. Yeah. But what was your take on that? And do you think, in light of this, anticipated plea deal, that there's some more shoes to fall in this saga of Stenger and pay for play? That could possibly some city people be involved as well?
I can't read the tea leaves. I was uncomfortable mentioning any names, even though the indictment and some of the names were mentioned in the papers. And but as far as Lewis Reed, I can understand his position at this very early stage. But Charlie, nothing is going to. I mean, you've got to have. You have to have some kind of at least the appearance of unity between the city and the county, I think, when you've got a situation like this one.
Well, the economic engines or groups were separated until recently when the city and the county joined. And then under Sheila Sweeney, according to the indictment, she started, at the behest of Steve Stenger, directing all the money to the county. And so if I was in the city, I'd say that is just completely wrong, because there's supposed to be a partnership, and yet... But
you don't dissolve the partnership, right? I mean,
well,
I think you work through it.
Especially now that they have Rodney Krim is in charge, and he's replaced Sheila Sweeney. So, I think that the caller's correct, that President Reed is closing the barn after the horses have left. I think he's actually quite accurate there.
But do we think that other shoes will fall?
Oh,
or definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It doesn't seem like we're going to have to wait too long.
There were people bribing, and there were people taking bribes. So, yeah, it takes two to tango. So I think,
And I think there could even be another layer of the parfait. People who are related to this through means that maybe we're not even thinking of. But Parker, thank you very much for the phone call.
Hey, Mark in Webster, how you doing, Mark?
And you?
Good.
Oh, hey, Wendy. Here's a question that I have. I've been doing business in St. Louis for 30 years, and I'm in the homes of a lot of I don't want to call them socially elite, but movers and shakers. And Charlie Dooley came to mind as I was listening about the Steve Stenger thing, and he's a customer of mine as well. And I think some habits are just hard to break, in individual communities like ours. getting sides to come together to agree on certain issues for the betterment of our community. And, not to point too many fingers, but, just the shooting at Ladue the other day. There's a few around St. Louis. When Ferguson happened, I have customers down there, and I just talk to the mindsets of them. So I have kind of like a love for St. Louis, but I wish that the mindsets would just grow and evolve enough to accept, people for their actions instead of their skin tone. And I think we'd be a lot further along than where we are today. Just getting out and meeting people is a very good, positive move.
Thanks,
and that's
Mark.
all I have to say.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark. Let's go to the Twitterverse. We have 3 tweets, we are told. Let's start with a stranger at Yale Hollander. Pardon me if I don't shed any tears over Stenger resigning. Look what happened to the Blues and the Cardinals, for that matter, after their abrupt leadership changes.
Yeah. And we heard from Holy Star 77. When it comes to money in politics, the only real scandal is what's legal. The only real solution to ending this corruption is a constitutional amendment to make elections publicly funded. I got another idea, too.
I think that was Ray's point tonight. And
I thought there was a third tweet.
I thought we had.
That's okay. I would say this. If you do business with a county, you can't give to a politician. And if you give money to a politician, you can't get a county contract.
You can't do any business with the county.
That'd be my plan.
That seems pretty simple.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised that it's as complicated as it is. We will go now to Bob in Oakville. Hi, Bob. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn. What's on your mind tonight?
Thank you. This is just more or less a general question related to Stenger and his guilty plea. And you hear this often, if not all the time. Someone pleads guilty and the judge wraps his gavel, case is closed. In 5 or 6 or 7 months, I'll give my sentence. Why is there such a delay if someone is guilty before a sentencing?
I don't know. There might be a sentence tomorrow.
I was thinking there would be a sentence tomorrow if he's pleading guilty before Judge Perry.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Thank you for the call.
But boy, it's been fast.
Howard in Belleville. Hi, Howard.
Yeah, yes, sir. I just have a comment about the Ladue Schnooks incident. I just wonder how people think when they dial 911 that the police are going to keep showing up, because here you have a thief resisting arrest, fighting with the police officer, ends up getting shot, and the first thing everybody wants to do is indict the police officer. I absolutely don't understand it. I don't understand how you're ever going to have law and order if this keeps up, because I see it on TV every day, similar incidents, and it's always the police that are wrong, even though the thief instigated the incident.
Well,
I'm going to hang up and listen to the TV now.
Yeah, thanks for the call. That's why I asked, should the thief be charged? Because I think some people are forgetting that. But the police officer herself did admit that she made a mistake. So it's not like people are indicting her.
We're not rushing to judgment.
She's indicting herself there.
And I think the photo, Howard, if you saw the photo that ran her booking, her mugshot, told the tale. I mean, it really did. She was devastated. And Ladue is not a high crime area. I would imagine these types of incidents don't occur very often. So she was clearly quite upset by that. But as Charlie said, it was by her own admission, but we appreciate your phone call. Let's go to Mark in Florissant. Hi, Mark. Welcome to Donnybrook. Your turn.
Oh, yes. My call is in regards to Steve Stenger. They should give him the max away when he ran against Charlie Dooley. He said Charlie Dooley and put the FBI behind him, and look what he done. So, yes, he should get the max.
What goes around comes around. Thanks for the call. Hey, John in Swansea. Welcome to Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hi, John.
Hey, greetings to you all. I come from this standpoint as a former newspaper reporter who did some police beat, and this has certain similarities to the 2014 situation where the New York City police officer accidentally killed a guy with a chokehold because he was selling Lucy cigarettes on the street. And now we've got a situation in Ladue where there was highly likely shoplifting involved, but I mean, it was like balloons or something insignificant like that. And it's one of the aggravating factors here in many cities is the police officers are expected to bend over backwards to please the local chamber of commerce, even if it's for minor things or retail violations or such as that. So it's the going overboard to support the chamber of commerce. I think was an aggravating factor here.
Going overboard for the Chamber of Commerce. That's interesting.
Now, in the New York case, I think you're talking about Eric Garner.
Right, and that was...
I think he did resist arrest, and I believe, now I could be wrong here, I think he died because of...
a pre-existing condition.
Yeah, a heart condition. And he didn't die because of the chokehold.
He did not.
Yeah, that's...
but I think there were still questions even today. There was a story on the wires about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So thank you very much, John, for the question and for the phone call.
Dave in Rock Hill. Hi, Dave.
Hey, how you doing today? This is Dave from Rock Hill. And earlier they mentioned who should be worried about this pay-to-play in St. Louis County. Well, in my opinion, they got pay-to-play at St. Louis County probate. And I'm going to give you a good example. And they should, Attorney General, if you're listening to this, go and get some of those emails. But anyway, back to pay-to-play and probate. Say you have a will, and you pass, and you leave your wife or your little kid as the executor of your estate, and then you go out and you get an attorney. Well, if the attorney is willing to pay, St. Louis County probate will let him pay and be not only remove the person's name in the will as executor and put the attorney as both the administrator and the attorney for the estate.
Dave, thanks for the call. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this evening's program, but you bring up some interesting points that maybe we should explore at another time.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
Let's go to Rick in Fenton. Hi, Rick. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hi, first-time caller.
Thanks.
A prior caller asked about why there is such a delay sometimes between a plea and a sentence. I'm an attorney. Often there is what's called a sentencing assessment report, at least in state court. In federal court, I don't know what they call it. But usually there's some delay at why they investigate, is this a good person? Is this a bad person? Should we lock them up, for a long time or for a short time? But if there's an agreement, which there may be tomorrow, where the parties have agreed on a recommended sentence, you can waive that sentencing assessment report or whatever the report's called in federal court. And so then, it would be, immediately, most likely, he'll be taken into custody or he'll be given a short amount of time to, kind of like the fellow Michael Kellen, where, he's kind of out running around getting his affairs in order. But that's why. Usually there's some kind of investigation into the person's background. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
And I think at the end of the day, it is the judge's decision. Thanks for your call.
Let's go back to the Twitterverse. We have a few more tweets. At Craig Riggins, Steve Stenger got so drunk with power that he basically pulled the pin on a grenade and put it in his pocket instead of throwing it. He ruined himself because of being a big shot who is now on his way up the river. At Craig Riggins, thank you very much.
Mike BK2, the editorial board of the Post-Dispatch being accountable for their Steve Stenger endorsement? Give me a break. Today's explanation was a total cop-out for their bad judgment. No Ian judgment. They knew he was corrupt and they still endorsed him.
Thank you at Mike BK2. And your tweets are welcome. Hashtag Donnybrook STL. We still have some time.
Hey, I think it's Aaron's turn. Aaron in St. Louis, thanks for calling.
Good evening.
Hi.
I was calling in reference to the incident that happened at the Schnucks store. It seems that there's definitely some training needed for the police department in reference to diversity and incident training, because the police officers should have acted differently in both situations. So I think there's definitely some training necessary, but not only for Ladue, but for Richmond Heights and even the city of St. Louis. So I think that that would solve a lot of the incidents. And I think what the other gentleman caller indicated before, I think if someone would look at the incident rather than the color of an individual's skin, I think situations might go just a little bit different. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate the phone call. Let's go to Lisa in Oakville. Hi, Lisa. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your
Hi.
turn. Hi there.
Hi, thank you. First-time caller also. My comment is that this evening when Ray Hartman said it still would have been better than if you would have had a Republican as county executive, I think that answer is so indicative of what's wrong with our region. We have had several very good Republican county executives, and to make that statement, it's the same thing in the city of St. Louis. They don't ever want to give anyone else a try when there could be a very good person in the city to be a mayor that is a Republican. I think it's a huge problem in our area, and I really dislike that statement that he made tonight. Thank you.
You know, I thought he was referring to Barry in particular. I'll have to listen to the tape, but I thought he said it was better than the Republican as opposed to a Republican.
A Republican, yeah. Well, the point was that Ray made, and that you were also making, Charlie, was that the Republicans didn't put up a stronger candidate.
Yes.
Than Mr. Barry.
I will say, though, I mean, Lawrence Roos may have been the greatest county executive ever in the history of St. Louis County, and he was, of course, a Republican. Bernice in Wentzville. Hi, Bernice.
Oh, hi, Charlie. This is Bernice from Wentzville.
Hi.
And I wanted to call and comment on the shooting. I was just sitting here. I'm 70 years old, and I'm African American, and I'm just wondering, when it comes down to police and people that, do crimes, I just feel that sometimes we just forget the human connection. I think sometimes if the police would look at a person as a human, I mean, a shoplifter is not a person with a gun, is not a person that's killed 2 or 3 people. I just feel like a dialogue somewhere in there would have kind of changed the situation a little bit. I just feel like sometimes we just take the human connection out of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, you might be right. I will say, I don't think the woman was shot because she was shoplifting. I think she was shot because there was an altercation.
There was a struggle.
Physical struggle. And that's why I say I'd like to see the video, to see exactly what kind of struggle it was that prompted this woman to reach for what she thought was a taser. Instead, tragically, was her firearm. Thanks for your call.
Thank you, Bernice. Let's go to Joe in St. Louis. Hi, Joe. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Yes. My main concern is we need the police, but with the different crimes that are going on, from shoplifting to running from the police, all the different things that some of these people are doing, is that the equivalent of being shot, being using deadly force, or even possible death? At the end of the day, these are still citizens in the community, whether they're doing the correct thing or the wrong thing, and the policemen are citizens of the community just as well. But lately, there's been a lot of force, whether it's with the shootings in the schools, whether it's the shooting in the synagogue, whether it's shootings on the police, whether it's shooting with the students against kids against kids. But there's just a lot of shooting going on for sometimes incidents that are really taser capability. Tasers can probably take care of the situation. Or even if you got to chase someone, does that still require being shot or being shot to death? There's just a lot of killing is going on. And we have a lot of reasons for why we do it, but at the end of the day, people are still ending up dead. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks for your call.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have time to go to the Twitterverse?
Let's do it. Sure.
Okay. At Sister Sarah 23, 2 lives were changed because of a mistake. I think the victim shouldn't have been shoplifting, but I'm questioning how you confuse a gun for a taser. Both people are at some fault. Thank you, at Sister Sarah.
And polysyllabic, whatever that was, maybe if tasers didn't have an almost identical size and shape to their gun, it would prevent situations like this from happening. That's a pretty good point. Hey, I think that's all the time we have, isn't it?
I think it is too. It's been a great show. It's been a fast, very fast program.
Always is, yeah. Thank you so much. Hey, don't forget to watch next week. We'll be back at this time.
Have a great weekend. Go Blues.
Go Blues and Cardinals.